everyone. I'm Gordon Bonus with Daily Extra, and here with me now is a rebellious giant on the Canadian film scene, filmmaker Bruce LaBruce. Welcome, Bruce.
Thanks for having me.
How do you approach a festival like TIFF? What gets you excited about this type of event?
I'm always really excited about TIFF because I've been going for so long, for like 30 years, since it was the festival of festivals when I was or 25 years ago when I was a university student. And it's grown and grown. So, I mean, it's a bit intimidating, I think, for some people because it's so massive now and there's so much going on and so many competing screenings and parties and, so you just have to really focus in on what you're interested in. I mean, I know a lot of us who are queer are interested in those specific films, so it's sometimes interesting to narrow your focus and just watch certain things like that, or the opposite, just like because that can be very limiting as well. So,
I know you have a wide-ranging interest in all things cinematic, from Hollywood icons to the more avant-garde. What filmmakers are you looking out for at this year's TIFF?
At this year's Cannes, I was the president of the Queer Palm, so I've already seen quite a few films. We saw, I think, 17 films during this year's Cannes Film Festival. So I've seen like the Cronenberg and the Dolan so I'm always interested in what Canadian filmmakers are doing, and I'm interested in what queer filmmakers are doing. Because of the Queer Palm, we really were trying to expand what the definition of queer is, and not just it's not just about films with obvious queer content, but films about a kind of sensibility, a kind of even a revolutionary sensibility that goes against like formal, orthodoxy in film. So I don't know. Godard, is far from doesn't usually have queer content per se, but he made like a 3D film that is kind of revolutionary, apparently. So, I'm very curious to see that, for example.
So in this approach, then, queer means something beyond just transgressive sexuality.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about queering things, queering content, queering form, just characters who don't specifically fit into any kind of categorization, whether it's sexual or just social, So, I think there's, in a way, I think we're in an era where the lines between what is queer and what isn't are kind of blurred, and for me particularly as a filmmaker, I've always tried to explore kind of sexuality that isn't about being fixed or entrenched, that's a bit more fluid. So, anyone who's acting out kind of sexually is interesting to me.
Well, let's start with some of the films that you saw on when you were on the Queer Palm jury. So let's start with the winner.
The winner of the Queer Palm was Pride.
Mm-hmm.
And this was sort of more or less for us a kind of a political choice because it's a really good film. It's done kind of in the style of a lot of films we may have seen, like maybe the queer version of the British version of Queer as Folk, or certain queer films that are more about queer movements, queer kind of the social fabric of England or of the UK, and then how the queer community relates to it. So it's about a strike of the Welsh miners in 1983, and a group of queer activists from London go to support these Welsh miners, and vice versa. The Welsh miners come to London to support the queer activists. So it's about very unlikely kind of partners against a common enemy, basically, which is kind of a heteronormative or oppressive kind of capitalistic or corporate kind of enemy that they're fighting against. So
Margaret Thatcher and a purse on top of it all.
Exactly.
And it's a true story.
It's based on a true story. And it's directed by Matthew Warchus, who is taking over the Old Vic Theatre from Kevin Spacey. So he's an established theatre director. And he really brings a kind of subtlety to the film. It doesn't kind of overemphasize all the kind of cliche moments, but it's done in a more kind of social realist kind of style, and it's interesting. It's like a gay Ken Loach movie.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great. What else is there that gets you excited?
One of the favorite, you know, even though we were looking at all these films that aren't necessarily, that don't necessarily have queer content, but are kind of, like I was saying, expanding the idea of what queer might mean. For example, there was films like Xavier Dolan's film Mummy, which doesn't technically have any queer content, but he's a gay filmmaker, and it's about a boy's relationship with his mother. And you know, it's an incredibly impressive film, and it's very formally rigorous, and it's totally worth checking out. It won third prize overall at Cannes, tied with Godard's 3D movie, so it's pretty impressive. There's also this film called Party Girl, which we all really loved, and it won the prize at Cannes for the best first feature. It's directed by a gay man and two lesbians, and it's about the gay man's mother in real life, and she plays herself, and it's incredibly moving and kind of. You know, it's about, again, the relationship between a mother and son, so it has very strong kind of, you know, queer notes in it.
And she is a fading party girl, and it's interesting how that is often what the relationship is between sons and their mothers, what this earlier era of glamour that appeals to us.
Well, there's that, and it's also the fact that, you know, she feels pressured into kind of, at a certain, a woman of a certain age, kind of conforming to what is expected of a woman of that age, and she's really resists it, and she kind of gives into it, and then kind of has second thoughts, and she, you know, lives a lifestyle that maybe some people would consider the kind of lifestyle that used to be associated more with gay men, like this kind of party lifestyle. She's like a kind of burlesque or stripper, you know, burlesque performer, and even though she's well into her 40s or early 50s, you know, so she's really resisting kind of the roles that women are expected to take at a certain point in their lives.
Let's see, there was a couple of other films that I think you were excited about. Which ones would you prefer to talk about? Foxcatcher, Xenia, or...
Yeah, I mean, Foxcatcher is, of course, directed by the same director as Capote, and it's, you know, it's pretty riveting. It's also done in almost a kind of fairly kind of realist style. And, you know, Steve Carell plays an extremely creepy, repressed homosexual, one of the most kind of creepy gay characters you will ever see.
When coming from
cinema.
you, that means something.
Yes. No. No. My characters are always sweet, you know, and don't have a problem with their homosexual behavior, even though they might not be gay identified. They still enjoy it, at least. This guy is pretty appalling the way he deals with his sexuality. But anyway, it's definitely worth seeing. It'll be up for a bunch of Oscars, of course, and then it's Channing Tatum is the wrestler. He and Mark Ruffalo play wrestler brothers. It's based on a true story, and you know they're both pretty hot in it as well. And then Xenia is, I know the director. It's a Greek film. You know, you know, I think the film has its problems, but it's definitely a kind of a queer, crowd-pleasing movie. And again, it's two brothers, and they're both hot.
You haven't seen the Pasolini biopic that's coming out by Abel Ferrara. What does the filmmaker Pasolini mean to you, though?
Yeah, I mean, Abel Ferrara was, even though his film wasn't officially shown at Cannes, his Dominique Strauss-Kahn movie with Depardieu was the buzz of Cannes. You know, they had like out of festival screenings. So this is his follow-up. It's about the last day or days of, I understand, of Pasolini's life. It's Willem Dafoe's Pasolini. You know, of course, Pasolini was just one of the most influential and, you know, genius gay filmmakers ever. So, I mean, he should be of interest to any queer audience. You know, politically, not just in terms of, you know, being gay per se, but just his philosophy, his Marxism, his kind of relationship to Catholicism, everything. It's like his fight with the Italian kind of orthodoxies. He's you know a complete pioneer and genius, and you know everyone should be interested in the film.
He is murdered, and a male hustler is sent to prison for his murder, who afterwards recanted his confession. The family is still interested in keeping the case open, and Ferreira is promising to reveal new information. I don't know, in the film, the jury's still out if that's actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's pretty well established that at the very least, Pelosi, the hustler, didn't act alone. So, yeah, it'd be great if there's more light shone on exactly what happened, because there's a lot of, you know, as you know, theories about the government being involved, or you know, that he was assassinated, basically. So.
You don't have a film at TIFF this year, but earlier this year, TIFF through Cinematheque had a huge retrospective of your work, and one of your recent films, Gerontophilia, premiered at TIFF as well. How would you describe the relationship between you and the festival?
Well, the festival's been really good to me. You know, going way back to the first film of mine they showed was Super 8.5 in 1994. You know, despite the fact that it was, you know, a sexually explicit film, or maybe that's why they showed it, I don't know. But, you know, with very frank, sexually explicit homosexual content. So, you know, they've been pretty fearless with me in terms of promoting my work and supporting me as a filmmaker. Even my film LA Zombie, you know, which was extremely controversial, which was banned in Australia, was shown at TIFF 3 or 4 years ago, and and then doing this whole retrospective, you know, and they actually made a new digital master of Hustler White from the original 16mm negative, you know, in conjunction with my American distributor, Strand Releasing, and I also was part of a show called Queer Outlaw Cinema, which was at the Bell Lightbox, which included, they showed my film Pierrot, Lunaire, and some of my photographs, which had very explicit content and a lot of transsexual content, and you know, they don't shy away from that at all. So it's great that in a province that has such a, you know, horrible history of censorship, they've really stood up, you know, to that kind of legacy and have really, you know, broadened everyone's mind, I think.
Mary Brown can, I don't think she's dead yet. I don't think she can return in her grave. Your latest work, Pierrot Lunaire, is an adaptation of an Arnold Schoenberg setting of symbolist poetry. You also directed a live production earlier, a few years ago in Berlin. Mm-hmm. How do you describe the film?
The film is really, it's an kind of a German expressionist avant-garde opera done in a silent movie style. So it's kind of
sounds straightforward.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated. I did an interpretation of Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire for the stage production that I did in Berlin. I was approached by Susanna Zaxa, an actress who I worked with a lot, and Premil Petrovic, who's a gay conductor from Belgrade, and they wanted me to direct a stage version of Pierrot Lunaire with Susanna Zaxa in the lead. So Susanna took voice lessons for 4 months, and we did the stage production. It was you know, got some rave reviews. Some people weren't having it, but it caused a lot of people saw it, and it caused a ruckus in Berlin. So I decided to make it into an experimental film, and I've used some of the stage footage and combined it with new footage that I shot last year in Berlin on location. But it's kind of faithful in its way to the Schoenberg piece.
And Susanna gives a wonderful gender-bending performance in it.
Yeah, I mean, well, when in my research of Schoenberg, I found out that he was really that even though it's based on the male commedia dell'arte character Pierrot, it's always played by a female in the Schoenberg incarnation. So I thought that got my mind, thinking about that it could be a transsexual character, female to male, and also Schoenberg was highly influenced by Grand Guignol theater, which has a lot of guillotines, amputation, kind of gore, and as if you've seen the movie, that there's some very disturbing kind of imagery involving a guillotine or a glory hole guillotine, I guess we should say.
The film premiered at the Berlin Festival, where it won a special jury Teddy Award.
Yes.
And
this year, yeah.
Yeah, this year. When can we see it next? What happens with it now?
Yeah, I mean, the Teddy, was great because it gave it a lot of exposure, and subsequently it's played like at the Moscow International Film Festival and at the biggest film festival in I think Ukraine, and it'll be at the Sitges Film Festival in September, end of September, early October. It just played at Vancouver at the Queer Festival. So I mean, it's getting around. I mean, it's already kind of played in Toronto, so I don't know when it'll be coming back, but people can definitely look out for it coming out on DVD eventually, probably later this year.
Okay, great. Bruce LaBruce, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.